He built an empire that seemed untouchable. Yet, behind the flashing lights and roaring applause, something was deeply broken. At 65, Simon Cowell faces a chapter that no amount of fame or fortune could have prepared him for. What happens when the man who decided the fate of millions can no longer control his own life? For decades, he transformed strangers into stars, wielding power that made him both feared and admired. But the truth behind his empire is not the glittering success everyone sees on television. What if the victories you celebrate most are also the moments that quietly cost you the most? From electric crashes to hospital beds, from lonely corridors of luxury to sleepless nights haunted by regret, Simon's life is a roller coaster of triumph and heartbreak. Can a man who conquered the world find peace when his own world feels fragile? We are about to unravel the story behind the headlines, the unseen battles that shaped a legend, and the moments that left even him powerless. Stay with us, because what you're about to discover is far more than just a tale of fame. It's the heartbreaking reality of Simon Cowell, childhood and early personality. Simon Philip Cowell was born on the 7th of October 1959 in Lambeth, London. His father, Eric Cowell, worked as an executive at EMI Music Publishing, one of the largest record labels in the world. On the surface, Simon had a life of privilege, comfort, and opportunity. Yet, for the young boy, the world felt heavy, full of expectations that were impossible to meet. School was never a place of comfort. Unlike other children who followed rules and sought approval, Simon rebelled at every turn. Teachers described him as disinterested, defiant, and restless. He was constantly in conflict, and many predicted a mediocre future for the boy who refused to obey. Expulsions became a pattern, a reflection of a mind that refused to fit into conventional molds. But Simon was not careless. He was observing. Every time he was scolded or sent away, he noticed how authority worked, how decisions were made, and how power flowed in corridors he was not allowed to enter. Even in punishment, lessons were hidden lessons about hierarchy, ambition, and influence that would shape the man he would become. At 16, Simon dropped out of school with no significant academic qualifications. His father, frustrated yet determined, gave him a chance at EMI. Not in an executive role, but in the mailroom, licking stamps and filing papers. It was a humbling beginning, far from the glamour that would later define his life. Some might have given up, humiliated, and unnoticed. But Simon's mind was already at work. He studied the executives quietly, watching their decisions, learning the patterns of who succeeded and who failed. Rejection became fuel. Every dismissive glance, every ignored suggestion, hardened a determination that would one day define his career. He understood that success was not about being liked or following the rules. It was about seeing the opportunity no one else noticed and daring to take it. Even in those early days, there was a sharpness to Simon, a clarity that would later be mistaken for arrogance or cruelty. The Cowell household, while supportive in material terms, offered little emotional warmth. Simon's mother, Julie, provided care, yet her focus was often on maintaining appearances. The young boy craved recognition, not just for his work, but for his identity, his ideas, his worth. The lack of emotional fulfillment at home mirrored the struggles he faced outside, being evaluated constantly and being told he was not enough. This combination of rebellion, observation, and hunger became Simon's silent weapon. While other teenagers were focused on friends or school events, Simon was thinking about influence, power, and control. He began to understand that life did not reward mediocrity, nor did it reward passivity, even if it meant breaking rules, even if it meant being misunderstood. Yet, despite his growing understanding of the world, Simon's childhood was not without isolation. He was different, and difference attracts attention in ways both cruel and instructive. Peers could sense his intensity, his unwillingness to compromise, and it often left him on the outside. The feeling of being an outsider would become a defining element of his personality, a driving force behind his need to dominate the music and entertainment world, to ensure that he would never again be powerless or invisible. Looking back, these early years contained all the paradoxes that would define Simon Cowell's life: privilege paired with pressure, opportunity shadowed by rejection, talent waiting to be recognized but constantly tested. He learned to endure disappointment, to turn frustration into strategy, and to see failure not as a permanent verdict, but as a lesson. Every slight, every humiliation, every overlooked suggestion built the foundation of a mind capable of reshaping an entire industry. By the time Simon left his father's house to step fully into the music world, he carried with him more than ambition. He carried resilience, forged in moments of invisibility, observation sharpened by rejection, and a hunger that was both dangerous and unyielding. His childhood had been a quiet training ground for a life that would make headlines not just for the successes he achieved, but for the price he paid to reach them. The boy who once wandered school corridors in frustration, the teen who filed endless letters in a mailroom, and the young man who felt invisible even in a household of means, all became pieces of the puzzle. The man Simon Cowell would become a titan of television, a maker of stars, a controversial figure feared and admired, was first shaped in those early years. Every laugh, every criticism, every ignored idea contributed to a character as complex as it was driven, a story of resilience hidden beneath a veneer of confidence. Early career. Leaving the mailroom at EMI was just the beginning. Simon Cowell stepped into the music world, carrying lessons learned from rejection, humiliation, and quiet observation. Yet, the road ahead was far from smooth. He was ambitious, yes, but ambition alone would not shield him from failure. In his early 20s, Simon tried to carve a place in the industry by starting his own record label, ENS Music. He was confident, energetic, and convinced that he could recognize talent the way no one else could. But the label collapsed within months. Deals fell through, acts failed to sell, and financial strain pushed him back to the reality he had hoped to escape. He returned home, sleeping once again in his childhood bedroom, surrounded by reminders of how far he had yet to go. For many, this might have been the end. For Simon Monder, it was a lesson from a brutal teacher that revealed the difference between what he wanted and what the world wanted to give. Humiliation became a companion. He witnessed peers achieve moderate success while he struggled. He watched the music industry reward connections and luck more than vision. But Simon didn't let bitterness take hold. He let it sharpen his instincts. He realized that he had been chasing what critics would admire, not what the masses would embrace. Commercial appeal, not artistic praise, became his guiding principle. Returning to various roles in other record labels, Simon slowly built an understanding of the business from the inside out. He learned the art of negotiation, the importance of timing, and the subtle power of observation. Even as he faced repeated setbacks, he studied patterns others ignored: the artists who drew attention but failed commercially, the acts dismissed yet adored by audiences. Each misstep became a piece of knowledge, a tool for the empire he was beginning to imagine. Fanfare Records became the next stage of his growth. As a consultant, Simon discovered a formula that blurred the line between music and entertainment. Novelty acts, unusual collaborations, and even television personalities were signed for their ability to sell, not for their artistic brilliance. Traditionalists scoffed, yet Simon's decisions began to pay off. Records sold, attention grew, and a reputation as a keen, if controversial, talent spotter started to take shape. But success was fleeting. Fanfare Records, despite its early wins, could not sustain itself. Simon faced debt of over $400,000, a staggering amount that brought him once again to his parents' home. At 30, he had tasted both the thrill of early achievement and the bitterness of failure. He had seen what worked and what didn't, but the path forward was still treacherous. Many would have abandoned their dreams. Simon Cowell viewed this as a turning point. This phase of his career was defined by relentless observation and trial. He experimented, sometimes at great cost. And each experiment taught him more about the psychology of audiences, the appeal of television, and the mechanics of fame. He understood that talent alone was not enough. Packaging, timing, and spectacle mattered just as much. He was learning the rules of a game that no one else fully understood, and every setback refined his strategy. The failures also tested his personal resilience. Confidence wavered at times. Friends doubted him. Critics mocked him. But Simon had learned from childhood that endurance could be more valuable than approval. Isolation, rejection, and ridicule became his teachers. By the time he secured his next opportunity at BMG, he was not the naive young man who had left the mailroom. He was a strategist, ready to wield influence with precision. In retrospect, these early failures were not setbacks. They were preparation. Simon's mistakes taught him how to measure risk, how to recognize mass appeal, and how to withstand criticism without losing focus. The boy who had once been expelled from school for rebellion had now learned to channel defiance into business acumen. Each financial collapse, each failed label, each misjudged act was a step toward a vision that only he could see. Controlling not just artists, but the path to fame itself. And so, Simon Cowell's early career became a story of paradox. He was young, talented, and full of ideas, yet repeatedly brought to the edge by circumstances he could not control. Yet, in those edges, he discovered his strengths. The ability to learn from failure, the courage to take risks, and the insight to see what others missed. These years were not just trials. They were the foundation of a future empire, the hidden scaffolding behind a man who would one day dominate television and music worldwide. Rise to fame. The turning point came when Simon Cowell joined BMG, a giant in the music industry willing to take a chance on him. This was no longer the boy fumbling through mailrooms or a man recovering from financial collapse. Simon had absorbed every lesson failure had taught him. He knew how to spot potential not just in talent, but in spectacle. He understood that the audience wanted more than music. They wanted stories, drama, and characters they could invest in emotionally. With S Records, Simon began to craft the formula that would define his career. He signed Westlife, Five, and Curiosity Killed the Cat, perfecting the manufactured pop group, a blend of appealing faces, catchy songs, and maximum commercial appeal. Critics sneered, dismissing his choices as gimmicks, yet the public responded in numbers that could not be ignored. Simon had discovered the power of mass appeal, the art of giving the audience what they craved, even before they knew they wanted it. Television, however, would become his true domain. In 2001, A British talent show called Pop Idol offered Simon a platform that would change everything. He was no longer behind the scenes. He became a personality in his own right. Audiences tuned in not merely for the contestants, but for him. His blunt honesty, razor-sharp critiques, and refusal to sugarcoat reality created a character both feared and admired. People loved to watch him judge, and yet they secretly understood the method behind his seeming cruelty. Every harsh word, every pointed critique was measured, designed to provoke emotion and viewership. American television beckoned next. In 2002, American Idol exploded onto screens across the United States, bringing Simon's brand of talent evaluation to millions. Over 30 million viewers tuned in each week, drawn not only to the promise of discovering the next superstar, but also to witness the man whose approval could make or break dreams. Kelly Clarkson, a young cocktail waitress from Texas, became a global phenomenon because Simon saw something others overlooked. The formula was simple but revolutionary. Combine talent, story, and television exposure, and the results were staggering. Yet, Simon's vision extended beyond producing a hit show. He wanted control, dominance, and a lasting imprint on culture. The X Factor, launched in 2004 in the UK, became his playground. Unlike American Idol, Simon controlled every aspect: the format, the contestants, and the subsequent careers. The show was vertical integration perfected. He discovered the talent, molded it for television, then profited from record sales. Leona Lewis, winner of 2006, saw her single, Bleeding Love, skyrocket globally. One Direction, 5 boys who didn't even win their season, became one of the most successful boy bands in history, generating over $7 billion in revenue. The peak of Simon Cowell's power was breathtaking. He controlled the pipeline of fame, deciding who would ascend and who would fall. He was judge, producer, and kingmaker, all in one. His face became recognizable worldwide, his name synonymous with authority in entertainment. By 2010, his personal fortune had surpassed $500 million, a testament to not just his business acumen, but to his unyielding ambition and relentless drive. But peak success carried shadows. The empire Simon built was not invincible. Television audiences shifted, critics scrutinized, and the human cost of his methods began to surface. Contestants, once celebrated, revealed the pressures behind the scenes, the emotional toll, the exhaustion, the sense of being products rather than people. Behind the cameras, Simon's world was a mixture of admiration, fear, and quiet isolation. The man who controlled millions of dreams often struggled to manage his own. Still, the public saw the triumph. The spectacle dazzled, the numbers impressed, and Simon's image as a genius of entertainment was cemented. Yet, those closest to him understood that the very qualities that propelled him to the top, relentless drive, strategic ruthlessness, and the refusal to compromise, also created cracks in the foundation of his personal life. Relationships were strained, friendships tested, and moments of vulnerability carefully hidden. Amidst the glitz and power, Simon's story during this period is as much about psychology as it is about music. He understood the human desire for recognition, the way audiences connect with emotion and drama. He could manipulate these elements expertly, yet the same ability that brought him unparalleled fame also heightened his isolation. Control, once the source of security and strength, became a fragile thing, a reminder that even the most powerful cannot escape the pressures of their own creation. The peak of Simon Cowell's career, therefore, is a tale of contradictions. Publicly, he was a mogul, a master of the music and television industries, a man whose judgment could change lives overnight. Privately, he navigated the complexities of human relationships, the physical toll of relentless schedules, and the quiet moments of doubt that come with extreme responsibility. The apex of fame illuminated both his genius and his vulnerabilities, setting the stage for a chapter of life that would test everything he had built. Simon Cowell had reached heights few could imagine. Yet, the higher he climbed, the more precarious the summit became. Triumph and tragedy began to blur, creating a narrative where every success carried the risk of personal cost. And as his story would soon reveal, reaching the peak is often only the beginning of a more challenging journey, one where control, power, and fame collide with the limits of human endurance. Personal tragedy. At the height of his fame, Simon Cowell seemed untouchable. Millions watched his every judgment on television, record sales soared, and his empire appeared unshakable. Yet, beneath the spotlight, a quieter, more fragile story was unfolding. A story of isolation, vulnerability, and an unforeseen turning point. For years, Simon's work consumed him. He traveled relentlessly between London and Los Angeles, overseeing talent shows, managing record labels, and crafting television spectacles. Friends and partners noticed a change. The man who once commanded rooms now struggled to rest. Relationships that might have offered comfort were strained. His partner, Lauren Silverman, and their young son, Eric, often saw only glimpses of him. Fleeting moments snatched between flights, meetings, and rehearsals. Success had built walls around him, walls thicker than any brick or steel. Criticism began to creep in, subtle at first, then louder. Contestants spoke about the pressure, the emotional strain, the harsh truths Simon wielded so casually. Mental health advocates highlighted the cost of fame. Manufactured overnight, contestants burning out, falling into depression, and sometimes worse. For every global sensation, like One Direction or Kelly Clarkson, dozens of hopefuls vanished into obscurity, dreams broken and contracts left hanging. Even the public started to question the ethics of the shows, wondering whether entertainment was worth the human price. Yet, Simon's most profound personal challenge came not from critics or contestants, but from his own body. In 2017, a fainting episode in his London home revealed the toll of years of relentless work. Low blood pressure, stress, and exhaustion had been quietly eroding his health. He dismissed the warning signs, continuing the grueling schedule that had brought him so far. But life has a way of forcing reflection, often through pain. The pivotal moment arrived on the 8th of August 2020. Simon was testing a new electric bicycle in the courtyard of his Malibu mansion, an activity meant to be refreshing, even exhilarating. Instead, it became catastrophic. The bike, more powerful than he anticipated, slipped from his control. Simon crashed hard, landing on his back. The pain was immediate, excruciating, and terrifying. Multiple fractures left him unable to move freely, and surgery became unavoidable. A metal rod was inserted along his spine, months of recovery stretching out like an unending road. For the first time in decades, Simon Cowell was powerless. The empire he had built, the fame he commanded, and the control he wielded over television and music all became irrelevant in the face of his own vulnerability. Tasks that had once been trivial, like walking or sitting comfortably, became monumental challenges. He was forced to rely on others, something he had rarely allowed himself to do. The boy who had once rebelled against authority, the man who had mastered influence, now confronted fragility in its purest form. This period of physical confinement triggered a deeper reckoning. Lying in bed, away from the demands of production meetings and cameras, Simon faced his life as never before. The hours spent working at the expense of family, the missed moments with his son, the emotional distance with Lauren, all became painfully visible. Money, power, and influence were meaningless when he could barely stand. The accident shattered more than bones. It fractured the illusion of control he had clung to for decades. Isolation magnified reflection. Simon realized how transactional many of his relationships had been. Friends and associates, once abundant, were distant. Calls that once flooded his phone became sporadic. The life of a mogul, once enviable, now felt strangely hollow. Even his accomplishments, the billions earned, the stars launched, the shows dominating screens, seemed distant and surreal compared to the immediate reality of pain and dependency. Psychologically, the crash was transformative. Simon confronted fears and regrets, long buried beneath layers of ambition. He acknowledged how work had consumed him, how ambition had overshadowed connection, and how relentless pursuit of perfection had left him vulnerable. This forced reflection planted seeds of change. Though the journey toward emotional healing would be gradual and uncertain, the fall was not just physical or emotional. It was existential. Simon had conquered the music industry and television, reshaped global pop culture, and amassed unimaginable wealth. Yet he now faced a stark truth. Control is fleeting, and life's fragility spares no one. The accident, terrifying as it was, became a mirror, showing him a reality that fame and fortune could never shield against. For Simon Cowell, the fall was both literal and metaphorical. The man who had dictated who would become a star now confronted limitations, imposed not by critics, the public, or competition, but by his own body and choices. It was a chapter of pain, vulnerability, and introspection that few had seen. A tragedy that revealed the human behind the mogul, recovery, and redemption. Simon Cowell's journey through recovery was nothing short of transformative. After the accident, the man who once defined himself by control and power found himself forced into patience. Each day was a struggle with rehabilitation exercises, constant pain, and the slow rebuilding of strength. But within this physical challenge lay an unexpected opportunity, the chance to confront the emotional void that had long been buried beneath ambition. For years, Simon had measured life in contracts, ratings, and global recognition. Lying in bed, he could no longer ignore the cost of his choices. His son, Eric, previously a presence between meetings and rehearsals, became central to his days. Simple moments building puzzles, sharing meals, and hearing Eric's laughter revealed joys that no #1 record or record-breaking show could provide. Simon began to understand that the empire he had built was not the measure of a fulfilled life. His relationship with Lauren Silverman also deepened. Years of emotional distance gave way to gratitude and connection. Vulnerability, once uncomfortable and avoided, became a bridge to intimacy. Simon realized that letting people in did not signify weakness. It was, in fact, an essential strength. For someone who had spent decades projecting invincibility, this was a profound shift. Professionally, Simon approached work differently. While he remained involved in television and talent development, the relentless pressure eased. He became more aware of mental health, ensuring better support systems for contestants on his shows. The cautionary tale of his accident became a platform to advocate for safety and well-being. Change, subtle yet meaningful, defined this phase. The redemption was not immediate, nor complete. Old habits and tendencies lingered, but reflection and time allowed Simon to recalibrate his priorities. Fame, power, and wealth remained tools, not rulers of his life. Recovery, both physical and emotional, became intertwined. Strength returned to his body, but clarity and balance returned to his spirit. Simon Cowell's redemption is a lesson in resilience. It reveals that even those who seem untouchable can fall, and that true strength often comes from confronting vulnerability. The man who once shaped the lives of millions discovered the importance of shaping his own life with care, attention, and presence. In facing pain and isolation, Simon found perspective. In losing control, he discovered a connection, and in the quiet, painful days of recovery, he began to redefine success, not by the empire he built, but by the life he could live fully, with love, awareness, and gratitude. Legacy and closing thoughts. Looking back on Simon Cowell's life, it is impossible to ignore the mark he has left on the entertainment industry. From transforming unknown talents into global superstars to reshaping the way television interacts with music, his influence is undeniable. He created opportunities that never existed before, giving ordinary people the chance to achieve extraordinary fame. Kelly Clarkson, One Direction, and Leona Lewis, names that became household icons, all owe part of their success to his vision and drive. Yet, Simon's legacy is complex. Alongside the triumphs are lessons in caution, human cost, and the weight of ambition. Many contestants experienced brief fame, only to face harsh realities once the cameras stopped rolling. Mental health struggles, broken dreams, and the pressure of public scrutiny are shadows that accompany the bright lights of success. His story forces reflection. How much should ambition cost? And is success meaningful without personal connection? Even at 65, Simon continues to evolve. The man who once measured life by control and power now measures it by presence, compassion, and balance. He is learning to embrace vulnerability, to nurture relationships, and to prioritize the moments that matter most. His experiences of failures, accidents, and hard-earned recovery remind us that growth often comes from pain and wisdom. From reflection, Simon Cowell's life is both an inspiration and a warning. It shows what is possible with relentless ambition and sharp vision, but also what can be lost when the personal is neglected for the sake of the professional. Fame, fortune, and influence are not guarantees of fulfillment. True legacy is measured not only by the empire one builds, but by the humanity one maintains along the way. As we reflect on his journey, one truth stands out. Simon's story is far from over. Even after tragedy and hardship, the chance for redemption, connection, and meaningful impact remains. It is a story that challenges us to consider our own lives, how we define success, balance priorities, and navigate the pursuit of dreams without losing ourselves in the process. Simon Cowell may be remembered for his influence on music and television, but the deeper legacy is a lesson in resilience, self-awareness, and the enduring power of human growth. His journey is a reminder that even those who seem larger than life are still human, capable of change, and worthy of empathy. Simon Cowell's life is a story of contrasts, brilliance and vulnerability, triumph and tragedy, control and surrender. He transformed the entertainment world, creating stars from obscurity and shaping culture in ways few could imagine. Yet behind the fame and fortune the man faced profound challenges, heartbreak, and the weight of choices that even wealth could not fix. His journey reminds us that success is not just measured by money or influence, it is measured by connection, presence, and the courage to confront one's own limitations. Simon's fall and recovery reveal a truth often overlooked. Even the most powerful must face their humanity, and redemption is possible, no matter how steep the climb. If Simon's story has moved you, inspired reflection, or sparked curiosity, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that uncovers the truth behind fame and fortune. Share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think defines true success? And stay with us, because the next story promises to reveal even more extraordinary journeys, heartbreaks, and triumphs behind the lives we think we know. The story of Simon Cowell is far from over, and the lessons it holds continue to unfold about ambition, love, and the cost of chasing dreams.